Hello, everyone. Welcome to my webinar, How to Take Your Business to the Next Level and Make It Highly Profitable. Thanks for joining me. I know you have a lot of ways you can spend your time, especially if you're a small business person, and I'm honored that you chose to spend some of it with me, and so I'm going to do my best to make that a valuable, productive decision for you. I'm going to go ahead and get right into it. This webinar is different than other webinars that you may have been on. I know I've been on lots of webinars, some of them not as productive as others, and some of them I paid pretty good money for and still didn't really get a lot of value. So my intention here is to provide you with a lot of value, and I'm going to do that by really focusing on one particular item that tends to be more problematic than any other for growing a small business, and I think everybody will resonate with that when they see it. So the first thing that we'd like to talk about here is, I told you I wasn't going to give you a lot of facts and figures and stats and that kind of thing, but what I do want to share with you is this one particular graph. And we often hear, I've heard it for years and years, that small business success rate is minimal, very small, that if you start a small business, chances are it's not going to last 5 years, certainly not going to last 10. And in fact, Rand Paul, who is a senator from the state of Kentucky, a few months ago actually was audacious enough to say that 98% of small businesses fail. But the fact of the matter is, the Small Business Administration of the United States government says that 60% of small businesses last at least 5 years and 40% last at least 10. So to me, that is great news. That's outstanding. That means that you can beat the odds. 60% that's good betting, to bet on 60%. So if I know that I have a better than average chance of my business succeeding, I don't know how much better it can get from that, from a peace of mind standpoint. So I wanted to start off with something very positive, because that's where I'm going to go with this webinar. We're going to go in a positive direction. I'm not going to tell you about things that don't work. I'm going to tell you about things that do work. The other thing about this webinar that's going to be different than other webinars is we're not going to drill down into a bunch of stats, and like I saw this webinar advertised on LinkedIn a couple weeks ago, 17 tips to grow your business with LinkedIn. Now, how in the world can somebody in an hour or less really digest 17 tips? Or even one would be hard to digest, and especially if somebody keeps rambling on and on about more and more. So I'm going to make this very simple. I'm going to talk almost exclusively about one particular thing that keeps small businesses from growing. I'm going to start off with what I call a global escape and arrival scenario, and I borrowed this from Frank Kern. So if Frank is on the webinar and listening, I'm giving him credit. I'm giving you credit, Frank. But basically, the global escape and arrival scenario says that there is some place that you are, or your business is, and there's another place that you want yourself or your business to be. And there are challenges. We all know there are many challenges between where you are and where you want to be. And a lot of those challenges, some of those challenges are time, clients, money, help, qualifications. And all of these things are challenging, and they all have to be overcome in some fashion or another. An interesting story about qualifications, that's one that I have heard so many times, especially recently, and I don't know why, but I have a friend who I went through a coaching school with 6 years ago, and at the time he told me in a private conversation that his goal was to be a spiritual teacher, a spiritual guru. And he's a Harvard-educated lawyer, so he's a smart man. I saw him 2 months ago at a little get-together that we had, And he is in exactly the same place. And I asked him why that he hadn't taken the leap. I said, Joe, what's going on, man? Why aren't you just out here doing this? Qualifications. He didn't feel qualified. He spent thousands of dollars between then and now, literally thousands of dollars. He's actually in Brendan Burchard's program right now, which is $15,000, and he has 2 more retreats scheduled for this year, searching for those qualifications. So there's a good example of how people can get hung up on these particular items. And there's more than these 5. These are just 5 that jumped into my mind. But the one thing that I believe impacts all of these and everything else about growing a business is stress. Stress encompasses all of these items and any other item that is a challenge between getting you from where you are to where you want to be. Any one of these, if you have stress about any one, or if you have stress about one that's not on here, it's going to exponentially multiply the challenge of that you're facing. So if you don't have enough clients and you're feeling stressed, then you're not going to be productive. You're not going to be as good at creating opportunities and insights as you would be if you didn't have the stress on your mind. And that's not to say that some of these things don't seem to be stressful, because they do. When you look out there and you see that you're not where you want to be, many times we can put our fingers right on what it looks like is stopping us. But I'm going to posit, for the purposes of this webinar, that stress is the #1 factor, and it's also probably the simplest one to overcome. And I'm going to show you exactly how you can overcome stress in this webinar. And when we're stressed, this is what we look like. This is what the world looks like to us when we're stressed. So if I'm trying to grow my business and I'm confused or perplexed or disoriented or bewildered or any of these things, it's going to be much more difficult than if I'm clear-headed, thinking straight, open to insights, open to opportunities. So I'm going to begin now with telling you what stress is and what the real source of stress is. It's not what you think it is. And I'm going to start by relating this to the physical health and well-being of the world before 1900. Now, the physical health and well-being of the world before 1900, in the early 19th century, 1800s, was not good. There were diseases, plagues, sanitation was a major issue, open running sewers, contaminated water. They had lots of odd and what we would call maybe even stupid ways to treat disease and maladies in those days. The bloodletting, they would drill holes in people's heads to relieve the pressure. There were more potions available then probably than there are now, and all of them based on some researchless type of information. But the reason that the real reason that the physical health and well-being of the world was in such poor shape was because they had the wrong model of what it took to prevent disease, of what it took to stay healthy. Life expectancy was low, infant mortality was high. People just accepted that. That was just part of living. Because the model was that these things just happened. Now, along came germ theory, and suddenly people realized what the real source of the health was, and it was in germs. And as germ theory took root and people began to realize that sterilization of surgical instruments and immunizations and clean water and all those kinds of things were essential to health, then the entire model changed, and now, in this day and time, we have a completely different outlook on physical health and well-being. We actually expect, without reservation, to have a really good physical health. Now, why I bring that up, why I talk about the physical health and well-being from back in the day, is because today we have in the world a very low state of mental health and well-being. And this mental health and well-being is well documented. We see it in the media. There are countless numbers of people who are addicted to Prozac and other mind-altering drugs in the quest of mental health. And probably the most representative sign of mental health, the one that's easiest to identify, is stress. Stress is rampant in the world today. So what is stress? Well, for the purposes of this presentation, I'm going to say that stress is a feeling. It's an anxiety. It's a feeling of anxiety. And when we have this feeling of anxiety, it manifests through our body in a lot of different ways. It can manifest as panic attacks, worry, tension, even chest pains. And this feeling is something that runs very deep, and we feel as if it's real, that this feeling is real, that there's something outside of us that's causing this feeling of anxiety. An example that I can give you to kind of show you what stress feels like is to imagine a 3-foot wide, 10-foot long board on the floor in front of you. If I asked you to walk across that board, there's not anybody on this webinar who would have any problem whatsoever walking across that board. You would just move your feet and you would go. You could dance across it, you could turn cartwheels across it if you're gymnastically inclined. You'd have no problem going across that board. Now if I move it up and put the board between two sawhorses about 3 feet off the floor, feeling maybe not quite as good as it was when it was laying on the floor, but you could still probably manage to get across that board. However, if I move that board up and put it between two buildings 100 feet in the air, now we're talking about an entirely different feeling. But it's the same board and it's the same feet. And all you have to do is walk across this board. However, what's happened is we're now thinking about all the other things around the board. Am I going to fall off the board? Is the wind going to blow it over? Will the board break? Will an earthquake bring the buildings down? All these things are going through our mind, and it creates this feeling, this sense of anxiety. Even though we know we just walked across the board on the flat floor, so it was no problem whatsoever to walk across the board. So that is stress. That's what I'm telling you that stress is. And when we're stressed out, this is what we look like. We may not see all these words when we look in the mirror, but we certainly feel them. And the more stressed we are, the bigger the words get, and the more we're concerned about what we're doing. Are we going in the right direction? Is this going to work? Is that going to work? We start bringing all our past failures and anxieties from the past into the future and multiplying them even. So that is stress. Stress is a feeling. Nothing more than a feeling. And the model for stress is what I call the current model for stress, and the reason it's so rampant in the world and we can't seem to get control of it, is what I call the outside-in model. Now if you look at this drawing here, you'll see that there's a building over there, and around that building there's a whole bunch of stress particles. It's just loaded up with stress particles. And with the prevailing theory, if you go in that building or near that building, you're going to get stress, just like you would get the flu or any other disease. You get around stress, you get stress. Two people walking there, same thing. The person on the left, very stressful. You get around her, you're going to get stress, no doubt about it. Even out in the open, in the mountains, there's still all these stress particles. So that's the current model, that we get stress, that stress is out there somewhere and that we are exposed to it and we catch it, just like the flu. And with that model, there's really only two ways to actually deal with stress. One is to avoid it. So instead of taking the job at the building that's very stressful, or working with people, being around people who are very stressful, then we avoid those situations. Maybe we work from home. Maybe we become a monk. We do something, though, to avoid that stress because it's out there and we're going to catch it. And the other way to deal with it is to release it. So we catch all the stress. We have no choice. We go to the building, we catch all the stress. Then we go home and we work out, or we do yoga, or we meditate, pray. And all those are wonderful things in their own right. Don't get me wrong. I love all of them. But really, when we talk about getting rid of stress, they're really just like putting a bucket under a leaky roof. You're going to catch the water, but you haven't really dealt with the problem. The problem's still there. The roof is leaking. The stress is still there. So all we can do is dump the bucket. In fact, that model is so prevalent that they even have stress factors. So if you have a problem with money or family responsibilities, job stability, all those kinds of things, there is a factor, a stress factor, that says this particular instance causes stress. And the more you're exposed to, the more stress you're going to get. It's really not a very hopeful model, actually, when you think about it. So now if you look at this diagram, you see that it looks almost identical to the first diagram, except that now all the stress particles are in the thought bubbles of the people. There's no stress particles around the building. There's no stress particles floating in the air around the couple that are walking. There's no stress particles on the mountain. The stress particles are all in the thought bubbles of the people. And what I'm going to tell you right now, in no uncertain terms, is that that is what I call the inside-out model of stress. And that model says that we are creating all our stress via our thinking. Our stress, the stress levels that we feel, are 100% related to our thinking. It has nothing to do with the outside world. The outside world, the events and circumstances of the outside world are completely neutral until we give them energy by thinking about them. So we create all this stress, and we do it innocently enough. But this model has been in effect now for basically forever. So this is the understanding that people have today about stress, is that it's caught from the outside. But I'm telling you that it's not, that it's an inside job. And this is the way it works. And this is the way it always works, always has, and always will. The first thing, there's an event. And that event causes a thought. We think about that event. And our thought creates a judgment. which then creates a feeling. And that feeling then turns into an emotion. Emotions are nothing more than the physical manifestation of internal feelings. So we feel sad, then we cry. Or we feel angry, our veins pop, we rage. We feel happy, we smile, sing, dance. Our emotions are directly responsible for our actions. All our actions are carried out through an emotional state. So if we have a poor emotional state, then our actions are likely going to reflect that. They're not going to be as productive, as meaningful, as good, to use a judgment term, as they might otherwise be. And our actions cause our results. Our actions are 100% responsible for our results. So if we want different results, what we have to do is we have to dial it back to our thinking, all the way back to our thinking. Now this pattern is always in effect. What's happened over time, over living life, the paradigms and social norms and all those sorts of things, make it seem as if that the event outside of us causes the feeling. But in actuality, there's a small lapse there. Any time that we have a feeling, if we just look backwards, we can identify the thoughts that are responsible for that feeling. And that is always the case. It may seem as if the event causes the feeling, but it doesn't. A metaphor, an example that I like to use is a basketball game. Most of you probably know a little bit about basketball. So a player hits a shot at the buzzer to win the game for his team. Half of the fans are ecstatic, elated, happy, joyous. The other half of the fans are despondent, sad, maybe angry. But it was the same event, the same exact event. So the event can't cause the feeling. Otherwise, it would cause the same feeling in all of us all the time. So the events are neutral. No matter how much judgment we want to apply to them, no matter what we think about these particular events, the events are neutral until we assign a judgment through our thinking. And then once we start thinking about it, we get the feeling. And once we have the feeling, then we come up with the emotion. All our actions are guided through our emotions, and then our results. And if you want to take the basketball example even further, think about the day after the big game, when you go to work or when you show up around your colleagues, your friends, your family. Long faces or happy faces. But once again, same exact event. So events don't cause feelings. Events cause thoughts. And thoughts create feelings, which turns into emotions, and then actions, and then results. Now this is a very hopeful model, if you think about it, because with this model, we can now identify what is the cause, the actual cause, and the source of our, in this case, stress. So if I'm having stressful feelings about something, I need look no further than my thinking and see what my thinking is. And once I identify the thoughts that are causing that stress, then I can do something with them. I don't have to go on Prozac. I don't have to get a drug. I don't have to go meditate like a monk. I can just simply identify my thoughts and not attach to them. Here's the other thing. Human beings, scientific studies have shown that human beings have between 50 and 60,000 thoughts a day. So you're not really the source of your thoughts. There's nobody on this webinar, and there's nobody that I've ever met who could actually generate 50 to 60,000 thoughts a day consciously. So our thoughts come from somewhere else, but what we do is, as humans, is we attach to the thoughts. So we see a thought come through and we attach to it and we think it's real. And when we think that thought is real, then it causes a feeling. And we go down that road that ends in the results. By knowing that our thoughts are the cause of our feelings, and by knowing that there's another 49,999 of them that are going to come along right after this one, all I simply have to do is bide my time for a little bit, and I'll get a new thought, a refreshing thought. And then I can attach to that. So I want to attach to the thoughts that serve me, and I want to just let the thoughts that are not serving me drift away, which they do, because there's thousands more dammed up just waiting for their place. The other thing that is so hopeful about this model is that this inside-out model. This is our natural state. We're born stress-free. You need look only no further than a group of children playing. And if you look at this picture right here, I don't see anything about this that would cause stress. This is our natural state. And our natural state is available to us by simply moving in that direction. You can't tap into it. It's not as quick as a drug. But if you look in the direction that I'm pointing you to, and that is that your thoughts cause your feelings, then you're looking towards your natural state. And within this natural state, anything is possible. Opportunities, insights. You throw a puzzle into a room full of children, they don't get all stressed out, thinking about when are they going to get it done, what's the final result going to be, who's going to be angry if we don't finish it. No, they just go to work on it. It's their natural state. It's our natural state. We've just tended to cover it up over the years through all of our thinking and all of the social norms and the standard practices and that kind of thing. But your natural state is available at any time. There's a learning curve to this, obviously. This is not something I can tell you right now, and I can imagine that most of you, if not all of you right now, are following me and can agree to me, at least to some extent. But even though it's natural, it's not necessarily easy to do this. However, it's simple. As I told you, all you have to do, seriously, is look inside. That's where you have to look. Stress, in my opinion, is the most important challenge to overcome to get from where you want to be, from where you are, to where you want to be. So remember the global escape and arrival scenario here? All of these things that you think are necessary to get you where you want to be, they're all there. I don't diminish that at all. But the fact is, if you can reduce your level of stress around any or all of them, then they're going to be much more easy to deal with. You'll have insights. You'll see problems will turn into challenges. Challenges will turn into gains. When our heads are packed full of all these negative thoughts and stressful thoughts, we're not very efficient or effective, opportunistic. None of those things apply to someone who's stressed out. And stress is an inside job. It can be dealt with. I've just shown you that. So you're sitting at your computer watching this, and you can see that this makes a lot of sense, right? And you know that stress is not the only thing. It's just one thing that stands in the way, but it's the big thing. It encompasses all of them. And that's exactly why I created what I'm calling my Dream to Project coaching program. This is a 12-session personal coaching program with me that starts with assessing where you are and identifying the gap between there and where you want to be. Basically your own global escape and arrival program. And we'll talk a lot about stress on this program. We'll work on stress because once the levels of stress go down, then the other things become much easier to tackle. And listen, I'm not going to get all hyped up and try to get you all hyped up about this, what it is, how it can help you. You've listened to me, you've heard what I've had to say, and so you know what I'm saying can help you too. So what I want to do is just go over exactly what's in this Dream to Project program and how it can help you. And if it's right for you, then I want you to get it. And if it's not right for you, I don't want you to get it. I'm going to do it without hype. I'm going to do it without fanfare. Here's what it is. It's going to start off with initial, full-blown, complimentary coaching session where we can establish your desired outcome and gauge your level of commitment to make it happen. There will be weekly 1-hour telephone calls or face-to-face meetings if you're Columbus or you want to come to Columbus. I'll help you create action steps every week. And I'll provide inspiration, collaboration, objectivity, whatever you feel that you need from me as your coach. But you will be responsible for your results, and those results will proceed from your actions. Stress will be a big part of it. You can bet your booty, because I'm big on stress. My flat rate fee for this program is $3,800. It's limited time. It's limited by the number of clients that I have. Right now, this is the only place that I'm promoting it, right here on this webinar. So if you want to get in on this program, just simply click here. There's absolutely no obligation. What I'm also going to do beyond the coaching program itself is I'm going to enroll you in my friend Brian Johnson's Optimal Living program, which is a year-long subscription. Every week you'll get an email from Brian, and he'll break down 3 or 4 really good books, personal growth and development books. I like to say that Brian is the modern-day equivalent of Cliff Notes, for those of you who can remember Cliff Notes. And the reason I'm doing this is because our program is 12 weeks, or 12 sessions. It doesn't have to be 12 weeks. It can be 12 sessions. But I want you to stay on point after that program is over, and this is going to be a great way to do it. I've been a subscriber of Brian Johnson's program for a while. It's wonderful. And that's not all. I'm also going to give you a copy of my book, Daily Doodling Quotes. This book is essentially a journal. What I've done is I've taken 69 famous quotes. You'll remember a lot of them. You'll recognize them. And I've attached an image to each of those quotes. Picture's worth 1,000 words, right? So you have the quote, you have an image, and then I have what I call my admonition, which is simply a way to get you to journal around that particular quote, to have you see that quote in light of your own life and see how it can impact you. It's a great book. I've got a lot of great reviews on this book. People love it. Now, if you're still not in, you still don't think that's enough, I'm also going to give you a 100% satisfaction guarantee. No questions asked. If you go through this program with me and you don't think you got your money's worth, I'm going to refund every penny. And you get to keep the bonuses, though. You get to keep the subscription, you get to keep the book. So talk about no lose. So just click the orange button and we'll get started. What will happen is that'll take you to a separate page where you can download the program description and also a form to fill out. The form's going to tell me a little bit about you, what you're interested in, where you come from, why do you want to do this, questions like that. Within a few days, within probably 2 days, I'll get back with you. We'll schedule a time to get together, and we'll have that introductory, complimentary coaching session right up front. No obligation whatsoever. And if you don't think the program is for you, then we'll go our separate ways. But if you really are serious about making your dream come true, then I encourage you to take advantage of this. You know, all actors, all athletes, all performers of any kind have coaches, and there's a reason that they have coaches. It's not that the coach can do the thing better than the person themselves. In almost every case, they can't. What they do is they can see things that the individual themselves can't see. All Fortune 500 CEOs have coach. So if you want to take your business to the next level and you want to get there fast, then click this button and let's get rolling. This is some of the things that people have told me. You know, this has worked for me. This reducing stress has been amazing in my life, and it's been amazing in some of my clients too. But these are some of the words that I've heard people use when they're living this life without stress. And the other thing about this coaching program that's different, it's different from an action coach program or any of those Dale Carnegie type programs. Nothing wrong with them at all. They're wonderful. But my program is effortless. When you operate without stress, everything else becomes effortless. So if you want to make your dream into a project effortlessly, then click this button and let's get rolling. And that's all I have. I want to thank you for joining me here. I want to thank you for taking your time. I know there's a lot of things you could do with your time, and once again, I'm honored that you chose to spend it here. So there's my contact information, davidwetmore.com. My telephone number. If you want to get a hold of me, if you have any questions, you want to talk about this, let's do it. I'm going to be doing more of these webinars. I'm going to be doing pick some other topics that are just as insightful. But I think this was a great topic to begin with. Stress. We all recognize it. We all know it exists. We all know that it's present in our lives. But most of us have never heard what it really is. And I'm honored and humbled, actually, to be able to teach people what this is, what stress is, and how it can affect you, and more importantly, how you can eliminate it, how you can get rid of it in your life. So once again, thank you. Thanks for being here. It's been my pleasure. I love doing this. This is my life's work. Some of you may have heard my life story. I'm not going to go over it now. Maybe sometime in the future we get coaching together, I'll certainly go over it. But these kinds of topics can make a tremendous difference in the way you live your life, and it can impact every part of your life, your business, your personal life, all your relationships. It's amazing what eliminating stress can do. And now that you know that you can do it, that it is simple. I didn't say it was easy, I just said it was simple. But and trust me, if you will begin doing this, I've seen people do it. I've done lunch and learns and had people walk out and tell me a week later that it made an amazing result in their life because they started looking at the source of their feelings. Once we look at the source of our feelings, it's easy to figure it out. So thanks again, and I hope to see you soon. Have a wonderful week. Bye.